is Linda Jo Martin, the Book Lady, and today is my weekly Christian video. So today I was not sure what I wanted to talk about. Finally came up with the idea to tell you why I believe in God, starting with an incident when I was about 16 or 17 years old, living in my parents' house, and I needed to hand in a paper at school that day, and I could not find it, and it was just terrible. I looked everywhere for that paper, right? So finally I prayed. Now I have to explain, I was not raised by Christians. I was raised by agnostics. My mom and dad were not especially believers at all. They sort of had the attitude that they didn't know whether or not there was a God and didn't really care enough to find out. So I didn't have religion in my household when I was growing up, but I did that day when I was looking for my paper that I couldn't find. I prayed and then went back to my desk, and immediately I found the paper. Immediately. I mean, like first drawer I opened or something like that. And I was stunned, and I stopped and I said, God, if you're really there, will you please let me know? Because I was not sure what to think, you know. I had the evidence, I prayed, and then suddenly the paper was there for me. So I did feel like there was a presence in the room listening to me when I said, please let me know if you're real. And then life goes on, right? A few years later, I was living in Redding, California, where I was a college student, and I had a two-bedroom apartment. It's amazing, back then the apartment was $135 for a really nice two-bedroom apartment, and these days that same apartment is being rented for over $500. It's just terrible. And back when it was $135, I thought that was a lot. But I remember one day my phone rang, and I went to go get it, and I heard a little voice like within saying, it's your mother. And then I picked up the phone, and it was a really bad connection, and I could barely hear the person on the other side of the connection, but it was my mother. So I thought that was pretty strange that I heard a voice say it's your mother right before I picked up the phone, and it turned out to be her, but it was a bad connection. So, like, she called me back, of course, after I told her it was a bad connection, but I thought that's strange. So there's really something going on as far as there being, like, I don't know, there's got to be another world, and if there's another world, like, even if there's like ghosts or something like that, or a guardian angel or something there, then there has to be a God. It just doesn't make sense that there would be one and not the other. So also when I was living there, well, this was before, wasn't it? Okay, right before I moved to Redding, I had a little car. It was my first car. It was a 1962 Volvo, one of those old red ones, and I was separated from my husband. I had my child with me, and I took the car and drove over to San Francisco to see my husband. And I drove all over San Francisco on the San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge and back, and up and down the highways on the East Bay, because my mother lived up in the El Sobrante area. And after a full day of running around in that little car, I was about a block and a half from home when the muffler fell off the bottom of the car, and I had to stop. But fortunately, I was so close to home, I just picked up my child, locked the car, and walked home. So I just thought that could have happened at any time during the entire day. I could have been on the bridge and it happened. It could have been driving around San Francisco on those horrible freeways over there, and it could have happened. But no, it didn't happen until I was within walking distance of home. So next incident was when I was in Reading, and with the same car. The car hadn't been operational for a while, and one day I just decided to go out and see if it was going to work. So I got in, started it right up, and started driving around Reading with my child. He was about a year old at the time, I guess. And after a while, we went back to my apartment, and then we decided to go out again, or I should say I decided to go out again. My one-year-old child, of course, went with me. He didn't decide anything. Anyhow, I was about a half a block from my home. I went down a hill, and suddenly the engine of that car caught fire. However, right there at that corner, in the shade under a couple of trees, there was a fire truck and two firemen that were standing around talking to each other. So my engine caught fire and they came right over and put it out. Now, what's the chance that of all the places I had been that day, it didn't catch fire until I was at the corner where the fire truck was and the firemen? So I just think that that's not coincidental. That's God watching out for me. And I do believe in God, and I guess other things have happened, but those were the four that came to mind when I decided to make this video. And so there's no doubt in my mind that God is real. And even knowing that, it didn't immediately make me become a Christian. I was one of those people who wanted to try a little bit of everything before I would settle on being a Christian. I mean, that was the last thing I ever thought I would be. Like I said, I was raised by agnostics. My grandmother on one side was Universalist, and I tried a number of different religions, and yeah, I went to a lot of different meetings. I was in one cult religion for 30 years. And then, by God's grace, I got out of that religion, and I was sort of like in the New Age type of movement, just exploring a little bit of everything: Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, any isms. I just wanted to know what was out there. I wanted to have spiritual enlightenment. I really wanted enlightenment. I tried so hard to have enlightenment. I bought courses from people who thought they could teach me how to have enlightenment. And I never really had enlightenment until I became a Christian and the Holy Spirit was placed in my heart, which is what happens when a person becomes a Christian. So, I'm just saying, there is a God. He is real. These kinds of things don't happen by accident. We're being watched over, we're being loved, we're being taken care of. And so I think I've reached the end of that video. Thank you for listening. Bye.